It spewed out air only a few degrees cooler. King, who'd arrived in Pakistan 6 weeks earlier from his group's headquarters in Helsinki, was still trying to adjust to the heat. Tiny beads of perspiration dotted his forehead. Abbas seemed completely unaffected by the temperature. With his stomach rumbling, King wondered if he had made a mistake leaving his cushy job in Helsinki for fieldwork, which had sounded exciting when he'd volunteered, but was proving to be both difficult and unpleasant. The International Equal Justice Project had sent him to Pakistan after receiving hundreds of complaints from prisoners and their families alleging abuse. So far, King's personal observations had confirmed those claims. Corruption, torture, sexual abuse, and diseases were the norm. There was no pretense of safeguarding even the most basic human rights. The seriousness of a prisoner's crime seemed insignificant. What did matter was money. If a prisoner had it, he could survive and even live well behind bars. Those who didn't faced physical abuse and starvation. Guards routinely demanded bribes, either money or sex, from visitors. Even after someone made it past the guards into a facility, if they brought food or some creature comfort to a prisoner, that inmate would have to fight for it. King had seen as many as 50 men in a group cell surge toward the bars with outstretched hands like a swarm of flesh-eating piranha whenever a visitor appeared. Weaker prisoners were immediately stripped of any items handed them, while guards watched, amused, sometimes placing bets on who would end up with goods shoved through the bars. King suspected his tour at Superintendent Abbas's prison would not be any different from the others, with one exception. This facility was reputed to be the most secure in the region, having originally been built by the British during the colonial period. From the outside, it looked impenetrable. The prison was surrounded by 15-foot-high mud brick walls, topped with razor wire and shards of broken glass. Its main entrance was a thick steel door, only large enough for one person to enter at a time. On either side stood an armed guard. The prison's 2-story administration building had been built just inside that doorway. Beyond it were 5 buildings that resembled army barracks, each holding 300 men in 6 large group cells. Guards paid more attention to separating prisoners based on their religious beliefs than on whether they were first-timers or hardened criminals. Because this was the region's most secure prison, it was where captured radical Islamists were kept. King was especially keen on observing if they were being treated differently from other prisoners. His organization classified them as political prisoners. Before he could begin his tour, however, he needed to get by Superintendent Abbas. "If you come into a man's house, especially to cast stones," Abbas said, "you should bring him a gift or token of your appreciation." So this was why Abbas was stalling. He expected a bribe. King couldn't believe the gall. Part of his task was to identify corrupt superintendents, and Abbas was so corrupt he didn't seem to understand that his thinly veiled demand was against the law. Either that, or he simply didn't care. Glancing to his right, King noticed an 8-by-10-inch color photograph hanging on the office wall. It showed Abbas arm in arm with several men wearing numbered athletic jerseys. Nodding to the picture, King asked, "You play football?" Abbas followed King's glance to the snapshot. "No, kabaddi. Do you know the game?" "Anything like rugby?" King asked. The chair underneath Abbas squeaked as he leaned forward to smash out his cigarette in an already butt-filled black plastic ashtray on his desk. "You're an American, aren't you?" he asked. "Canadian, actually, but I get mistaken for an American all the time." "Let me ask you this, Mr. Canadian. How do you expect to tell me how I should manage a Pakistani prison when you don't even know about kabaddi?" Without waiting for an answer, Abbas barked an order into his desk phone, and then told his guest, "One of my wardens will give you a tour now." King was about to thank Abbas when the wall behind the superintendent exploded. Chunks of mud bricks and plaster flew toward the Canadian, who was blown off his chair by the blast. King flew backward into the wall behind him, slamming into it hard before falling face first onto the dirty tile floor. Struggling to remain conscious, he felt a jarring